Issei is a lonely gooner who finally bags a smoking hot chick only for her to stab him on the first date. However, he gets reincarnated by a busty demon queen who turns him into her personal weapon, made to clap enemies by day and her thighs by night.
I'm willing to do anything for you as long as it makes you happy.
It all begins with Issei and his friends daydreaming about being crushed by mega milkers just like you. As a group of girls pass by them, Issei complains that he had hoped he would get a hot girlfriend by junior year, but he's still the CEO of Dry DMMs. Suddenly, he catches a glimpse of Rie's Gremory, president of the Occult Research Club, and is instantly drawn to her despite knowing a premium baddie like her would never notice someone like him. Later that day, as Issei sulks over not having a girlfriend, a girl walks up to him. She introduces herself as Yuma and shyly reveals that she has a crush on him. However, since he has never seen her before, his mouth opens wider than your mom.
Emotional, damn it!
The next day, Issei proudly introduces Yuma as his girlfriend to Motohama and Matsuda, who call him a traitor for betraying the Brotherhood. After class, Yuma shyly asks Issei out on a date to which he happily agrees to, thinking he would finally get laid. So the next morning he shows up earlier than usual for his date. While waiting for his girlfriend, a mysterious girl hands him a talisman, claiming it will grant his deepest wish. Before Issei can make sense of it, Yuma arrives and the talisman slips from his mind. From there, they go browsing stores and later stop for a quick bite where Issei finds himself thinking that he's really lucky to have a cute girlfriend like Yuma. While walking home, Issei grabs Yuma's hand, who smiles shyly in return. Suddenly, she tells him that she wants him to do something special for her to celebrate their first date. Thinking he is finally going to lose his lit virginity, Issei says he will give her anything she wants, but she suddenly asks him to die. Suddenly, Yuma transfers into a thoughty angel, which fills Issei with more excitement than fear. Summoning a holy weapon, Yuma tells Issei his time is up and stabs him with it. As blood starts to ooze out of him, Yuma casually tells him that he should blame God for planting a sacred gear inside his body. With her job done, Yuma flies away, leaving Issei in the park to die alone. Now alone, Issei looks at his crimson red hand, which reminds him of Rie's, making him wish that he could squeeze her jugs before meeting his end. Suddenly, the talisman in his pocket flares up and a glowing pentagram materializes before him. To Issei's shock, Rie steps out and tells him that she is here to save him, but from now on, he will live to serve her and only her. The following morning, Issei wakes up in his room. Confused, he heads to the academy, but when he meets his friends, they don't remember anyone named Yuma. Weirded out by this, Issei decides to relax at Matsuda's Jizz Den. However, he freaks out when his vision becomes extremely sharp and vivid. Issei decides to head home, but on his way, he finds out that he can hear people from miles away. To seek answers, he heads to the park, now sure that whatever happened with Yuma wasn't a mere dream. Suddenly, a man in a trench coat spawns out of thin air, which scares Issei so much that he tries to escape only for him to get stabbed by a magical spear. Falling to his knees, Issei realizes that this pain is worse than getting his nuts busted. Upon touching the spear, Issei further cries in pain, and the man reveals that his weapon is made of light, which is poison for his kind. Just as he is about to throw another spear at Issei, Ries appears from a pentagram. While Issei loses consciousness, the man tries to attack Ries, who receives protection from two of her servants. At that moment, he realizes he is face to face with Ries from House Gremory. He instantly kneels before her, revealing he is a fallen angel named Donasik. Ries politely but firmly tells him that if he lays hands on Issei, he will never see the sunlight again. Donasik acknowledges the strength of Ries, but warns her that she should keep a tight leash on her pets. The next day, Issei wakes up and is startled to find Ries without her plot armor. Just when he thinks this is a wet dream, Ries confirms his encounter with Yuma, and the events that have happened since then are all very real. But most importantly, she is a devil whom now owns his body. Before he can register anything, Issei hears his mother coming up, so he tries to hide Ries. However, when the door opens, misses. Hyudo finds her son with a smoking hot babe. The door shuts off quickly, and Issei hears his mom tell his father how he has a girl with massive calcium tanks in his bed. At that moment, he prays for an asteroid to hit his house so he doesn't have to face humiliation from his parents. Suddenly, his thoughts drift off to a more pressing matter as he wonders if his little Issei got to explore Ries's cave. In the meantime, Ries puts on her peach protectors and tells him that his body is quite strong since he managed to have a speedy recovery despite being fatally wounded. Confused, Issei asks Ries how he even managed to survive such a powerful attack, causing her to reveal that she shared her magical energy with him. a process which can only work if she hugs him completely bare. Just when Issei is about to celebrate this mega win, he remembers how Riez told him she was a devil. He asks if this is some new zodiac sign which makes her laugh. She tells Issei that for now, all he needs to know is that she is her master. At the academy, everyone looks at Issei with jealousy as he walks with Riez and her jugs. Once she heads to her class, Issei receives a punch from Matsuda, who asks him which god he prayed to that helped him breathe the same air as Riez freaking Gremory. Despite getting punched, Issei proudly tells his friends he got more action with Riez in a night than Eren got during the rumbling. Meanwhile, a girl called Sona tells Riez that she never imagined someone like her would include someone as pathetic as Issei in her household. Riez herself doesn't know why she took in Issei, so she replies to Sona that it feels like she now has a younger brother. Sona wonders what in the Alabama is going on here but decides to keep quiet. After classes, Issei impatiently waits for Riez to summon him when he is greeted by Mr. Golden Nuts. Kiba approaches him and states Riez wants to speak to him. Meanwhile, Kiba's fangirls are disgusted upon seeing someone as handsome as him speaking to a lowlife like Issei, which of course ticks off Issei. Seconds later, they arrive at the Occult Research Club where Issei finds Kaneko. Seeing her up close, he begins daydreaming about her milkers that bring out all the lolicons out when he is greeted by the greatest pair of double Ds. The girl introduces herself as Akino, the vice president of the club, and Issei shyly assures him that he's usually a lot less awkward. In truth, his brain makes up fantasies featuring Akino and Riez having pillow fights wearing absolutely nothing but their skin. Once Riez arrives, they all sit down for a serious chat. She welcomes Issei as the newest member of the Occult Research Club. However, she quickly adds that the club is only exclusive to the devils belonging to her. Surprise, Issei asks if everyone in this room is a devil, and Riez affirms, stating that the man he encountered was a fallen angel who got kicked out of heaven for being naughty. Since then, the fallen angels have continued targeting both humans and devils. However, the devils have it the worst, since they're also targeted by the angels. After receiving so much information at once, Issei's brain practically shuts down to help him process it all. Riez shows him a photo of Yuma and calmly confirms that his little girlfriend was real. When Issei asks what she knows about Yuma, Riez explains that she is a fallen angel from the same group as Dona Seek. Still confused, Issei mentions that his friends don't remember her at all. In response, Riez reveals that Yuma used her powers to erase Matsuda and Motohama's memories, just as she did earlier that morning with his parents. Riez then tells Issei that Yuma's mission was to eliminate him because they suspected he had a dangerous item hidden within him. At that moment, Issei remembers being stabbed by Yuma's light spear as she believed he possessed a sacred gear. Akino joins in, explaining that throughout history, sacred gears have been passed down to powerful humans. These weapons are so strong that they pose a threat to both devils and fallen angels. To test him, Riez instructs Issei to raise his hand and imagine the strongest being he can. Unfortunately, his mind wanders off again, and he ends up failing the test. When he gives up, Riez reassures him that there's no need to rush. Still feeling useless, Issei insists there must be a mistake. In his mind, someone like him, who spends most of his time watching Annie and Deer recaps, couldn't possibly be important, but Riez tells him there's no mistake, pointing out that the fallen angels clearly saw him as enough of a threat to try and eliminate him, not once but twice. Issei then asks how he's still alive if they actually succeeded. Riez holds up the strange talisman he had received earlier on his date with Yuma, and reveals that in his final moments, he unknowingly called out to her and she responded by reincarnating him into the Gremory household. When his wings emerge, Issei finally accepts the truth that he is now a devil. Riez goes on to explain that devils gain power by forming contracts with humans. However, in the modern age, people are no longer performing summoning rituals with blood sacrifices. To keep up with the times, devils now use magic circles to connect with humans who are desperate enough to ask for their help. She gives Issei a stack of these magic circles and sends him out to deliver them, mainly to people who seem emotionally drained and hopeless. After being briefed on everything, Issei is sent to handle a client originally assigned to Kaneko. When he arrives at the client's house, the man opens the door, takes one look at Issei, and immediately looks disappointed. Even though the guy is rude and looks like he hasn't showered in weeks, Issei stays polite and asks if he needs help. The man replies that he was expecting someone attractive and claims Issei is not even the A of attractive. As the night goes on, Issei ends up bonding with the miserable client since both of them are painfully ugly, and neither has ever been near a girl without being ignored or laughed at. After the unsuccessful job, Issei heads home, but along the way, he senses something strange. He He turns around and sees another fallen angel. She introduces herself as Kalawana and immediately starts throwing light spears at him. Refusing to be rescued by anyone again, Issei shuts his eyes, focuses, and manages to activate his sacred gear. The moment it appears, Kalawana panics and disappears without a fight. Issei then reports the incident to Riez. However, instead of praising him, she scolds him for being reckless and acting alone. Issei quietly accepts the criticism and returns home. The next day, while still thinking about everything Riez said, Issei walks through town in a daze. Suddenly, he bumps into a girl, and before he can say anything, he accidentally catches a glimpse of her chest, which is enough to knock him out. After memorizing every curve of Asia's figure, Issei finally snaps out of his daydream and decides to actually help her. The moment their eyes meet, it becomes crystal clear to both his brain and body that she's exactly his type. Asia turns out to be a bit naive and asks him for directions, explaining she is lost. As they walk together, she casually shares that she was recently assigned to the local church and is happy to meet a kind young man. During their conversation, she spots an injured boy on the side of the road and rushes over to help him. Issei watches in disbelief as she uses healing magic to treat the child, but then, without warning, he feels a sharp pain shoot through his hand. Asia immediately apologizes, explaining that she was blessed by God and sometimes her healing power affects others around her. A few minutes later, when they reach the church, she invites Issei to come in so she can thank him properly. But the moment he looks at the building, his entire body reacts, shaking with pain from head to toe. Panicking, he politely excuses himself, promising he'll try to visit sometime. Asia looks a little disappointed but still smiles and tells him to stop by whenever he can. As they part ways, Issei can't help but think Asia is way too sweet for her own good. But when he later meets up with Riez, she warns him not to go near churches again because for devils, such places are off limits. To make her point even clearer, Riez explains that if he keeps hanging around church folk, he'll be exorcised, and exorcism for a devil means total erasure. Terrified, Issei immediately promises to stay far away from any building with a cross on it, which is easy for a lowlife like him. Later that evening, Issei sulks in the clubroom until Akino arrives, and in her usual teasing tone, offers a foot job. Just as things start to get weird, Riez walks in, and Akino quickly changes the topic. Instead, she informs Riez that the Archduke has requested they handle a stray devil. On the way to the mission, the group takes the time to explain what a stray devil actually is to Issei. They reveal that sometimes a devil betrays or murders their masters so they can live as they please. Akino goes on to say that the one they're about to face is known to lure people into an abandoned building before devouring them. Riez tells Issei to observe closely to learn how experienced devils handle battle. The mission takes a strange turn when a pair of massive hooters suddenly appear from the shadows, leaving Issei too distracted to think straight. Riez identifies the enemy as a visor type of devil that escaped their master and became corrupted by their own desires. The situation escalates fast when the rogue devil activates actual booby traps. Issei, stunned by the weaponized chest, can't help but think such a body was completely wasted on the wrong person. Kiba moves first, slicing off the devil's arm in an instant. Riez explains that Kiba is her knight and specializes in speed. Not long after, Kaneko steps in and displays her insane strength, prompting Riez to state that Kaneko holds the role of Rook, known for power and defense. When the stray devil attempts to strike Riez, Issei instinctively jumps in and shields her without thinking. Akino then finishes off the opponent using her lightning powers, showing off her role as the queen. Finally, Riez, acting as the king, obliterates the stray devil entirely and ends the battle. After everything settles, Issei asks what his own role is. He's quickly informed that he's a pawn, the lowest ranking piece in the team. The title alone brings his mood crashing down, and he spends the next day sulking like a rejected loser. Eventually, he's assigned a solo job. Upon reaching the client's house, he feels an overwhelming sense of dread, but he remembers that Riez warned him that if he doesn't complete the contract, she'll be disappointed. Not wanting to let her down, he forces himself inside, only to find the floor smeared with blood. Suddenly, he's confronted by a man named Fried Zelzen, a rogue priest and a member of an exorcist organization. The moment he sees Issei, Fried snaps and begins ranting about how much he despises devils. Out of nowhere, Asia appears from a nearby room and is shocked to see Issei. Frozen with shame, Issei reveals that he's a devil, though lying to her was never his intention. Asia tears up, and before he can react, Fried mocks her for thinking Issei is a good person because to him, the idea of a good devil is non-existent. Asia ignores him and stands firmly in front of Issei, insisting that he means no harm. Her words, however, only fuel Fried's irritation, and in a burst of fury, he prepares to strike her. Issei, unable to watch her suffer, calls upon his sacred gear and tries to fight. But it's no use as he's completely outmatched. Fried easily blocks and counters everything Issei throws at him. Just when the situation reaches its breaking point, a glowing magic circle appears. Riez and her team step through, arriving just in time. Before any further combat can take place, Akino calmly states that this isn't the right moment to fight since the risk is too high, and engaging Fried now would be reckless. Riez agrees and orders the team to retreat. As they prepare to leave, Issei begs her to bring Asia with them, not wanting to leave her behind. But Riez refuses as only members of her household can travel through her circle, and Asia isn't one of them. With no other option, Issei is forced to leave. As the circle closes and they return home, he silently weeps, unsure if he will ever see his friend again. After receiving a tight hug from Riez, Issei finds life is worth living again. Once she is done sharing her magical energy with him, Akino steps in to put bandages on his wounds. Curious, Issei asks the gang since when did the priest stop diddling tiny humans and started hounding random demons, so Kiba explains that Fried is a stray priest, a disgraced member of the church who now works under the fallen angels. This revelation prompts Issei to assume that Asia must also be serving under the same faction. Even though she technically falls under the enemy category, Issei finds himself completely incapable of shaking off his attraction to her. Trying to distract himself, he heads to the park for a workout session, but his attempt at physical activity ends up exposing that his strength is just as pathetic as his stupid hairstyle. While struggling through his exercise routine, he suddenly spots Asia standing nearby. Later, at a restaurant, she explains that she was simply on a break and decided to relax for a while. Seeing her again brightens Issei's mood, and he suggests they spend the day together. Taking his suggestion to heart, the two visit an arcade where Asia unexpectedly shows she is a cool nun. Hoping to make a good impression, Issei wins a toy for her, which brings her visible joy. As she hugs the plushie tightly, she begins to think to herself that this might be the last time she'll ever get to enjoy a moment like this with him. On their way out, Issei winces from a sharp pain in his arm. Without hesitation, Asia uses her magic to heal him once again. However, seeing her on her knees, Issei finds all the blood rush to his wee-wee, so he stands up and starts working out before things get out of control. Once he is all healed up, he praises Asia, which prompts her to open up about her past. She reveals that her parents abandoned her shortly after birth, and she was taken in by a European church. During her childhood, she once saw a wounded dog and prayed sincerely for its recovery. Miraculously, her prayer was answered, and the animal was healed. Word of her ability spread, and she was eventually transferred to a bigger church where she was tasked with healing the faithful who came from all over the world. However, her fate took a dark turn the day she used her power to heal a wounded devil. The church immediately cast her out, labeling her a heretic. With nowhere to go, she was taken in by the fallen angels, who offered her a new place to belong. Despite this betrayal, Asia holds no grudge against God. Instead, she tells Issei that since she is a loser without any friends, all she wants is to be included in a group chat. As she shares her story, Issei reassures her that despite their differences, she can count on his friendship. Just then, Yuma appears, interrupting their peace by stating that it's too soon for them to exchange friendship bracelets. Asia stands her ground and tells Yuma she won't return to the church, refusing to take part in actions that harm others. Issei also steps forward and attempts to dismiss Yuma, but she summons her light lance, making her intentions clear. Issei calls forth his sacred gear, prompting Yuma to smirk. She explains that his gear, known as the Dragon Hans, can double his power but only for a short time. She then demands that he hand over Asia, but Issei refuses, claiming he cannot abandon someone he considers a friend. Before he can activate his gear, Yuma launches a light lance that lands directly on his chest, leaving a gaping wound. Asia quickly moves to heal him, and once the magic sets in, Issei realizes he can no longer feel pain. Yuma observes this and once again demands Asia return with her, revealing that Asia possesses a rare sacred gear called Twilight Healing. Unlike Issei's, hers has actual value. Asia, however, sees through her words and accuses Yuma of only caring about her power. Yuma, unbothered, admits that she didn't go through so much trouble for her so they could talk about how cute Prime Justin Bieber was. Seeing how cruel Yuma is, Issei ends up pleading for Asia's safety, but Yuma counters by offering a deal. If Asia comes willingly, he will be spared. To prove she's not bluffing, she hurls another lance, deliberately missing to emphasize her control. Feeling cornered and desperate to protect Issei, Asia agrees to go with Yuma. She is promised that after the upcoming ritual, all her pain will end. Now left alone, Issei curses his own weakness, and when he returns to the clubhouse, he is immediately slapped by Riez, who sternly reminds him that spending time with someone like Asia is dangerous and unacceptable. For the first time, Issei pushes back and tells Riez to remove him from her household, convinced that as a pawn, his absence won't be noticed. Riez, though clearly upset, tells him otherwise. She explains that pawns hold a unique potential. While their starting point may be low, they have the ability to evolve, especially when paired with a sacred gear like his, which grows stronger depending on his willpower. The more determined he is, the more power it can produce. Before she can say more, Akino enters and whispers something in Riez's ear, prompting her to leave immediately. Alone again, Issei replays her words in his mind, realizing that he might be able to earn a promotion if he defeats one of her enemies. With that logic in mind, he decides to confront the fallen angels and rescue Asia. Just as he is about to depart, Keiba and Kaneko arrive, stating that they'll accompany him. Meanwhile, Riez and Akino arrive at the church, where they are met by a fallen angel named Maitelt. Riez wastes no time taunting her, stating that her team has already entered the church without resistance. Maitelt, unfazed, confidently claims that her subordinates won't be so easily defeated. Inside the church, Issei, Keiba, and Kaneko prepare their strategy. Issei thanks them for supporting him, and Keiba, with a small smile, says he's glad to help, especially since he harbors deep hatred for fallen angels. However, since Keiba doesn't have a huge pair of tatas, Issei ignores him and focuses on the mission. Upon entering the church, they are immediately confronted by Fried, who is more than ready to fight. Keiba steps up, revealing his weapon of choice, the Holy Eraser, a blade forged from darkness, capable of consuming light. Outside, Maitelt summons Kalawana and Donasik to join her against Riez and Akino. Inside, Fried is quickly overwhelmed by the combined strength of the devils. Realizing he is outmatched, he chooses to retreat instead of fighting to the death. Issei and the others continue deeper into the building and eventually find Asia's location. But before they can reach her, Yuma appears and announces that they've arrived too late as the ritual is almost complete. Turns out, the fallen angels have no intention of sparing Asia as they plan to extract her sacred gear, despite knowing that doing so will end her life. As Yuma successfully extracts Asia's twilight healing, a wicked grin spreads across her face. With that sacred gear now hers, she considers herself the ultimate fallen angel. Witnessing this, Issei can no longer contain his rage. Fueled by emotion, he leaps into action, determined to chop off Yuma's wings now that she has gone full Maleficent mode. Keiba and Kaneko swiftly clear the path through the chaos, allowing Issei to rush toward the altar. But by the time he reaches Asia, she has already collapsed in his arms. His life starts to fade from her weak body. Yuma casually mocks him, telling him to keep the broken doll if he wants. But Issei, holding back tears, demands that she return Asia's sacred gear. Yuma responds with her usual scorn and reveals that she went behind her superiors' backs to carry out this entire plan, and now that everyone has seen her betrayal, she has no choice but to eliminate them all. Shaken and heartbroken, Issei admits that he truly had feelings for her, only for Yuma to burst into laughter and humiliate him further. She mocks his delusion and tells him she'd never go for someone who looks like expired milk.
Emotional, damn it!
Meanwhile, outside the church, the fallen angels find themselves unable to get past Akino's barrier. With no physical attacks possible, Maitelt resorts to insults, taunting Riez with the claim that Yuma will easily finish Issei off. Riez, however, remains firm in her belief, calmly assuring Maitelt that Issei is her strongest pawn. Back inside, Yuma continues her taunts, until Issei crashes out, which further pushes the thought to become more unhinged. Before she can attack him, Issei scoops up Asia and makes his escape while Keiba and Kaneko stay behind to take on Yuma's minions. Grateful for their help, Issei flees the church with tears in his eyes and carries Asia to a nearby empty chapel. In that quiet place, Issei tells the fragile girl that he'll always protect her. Asia, barely able to speak, shares that the time she spent with him was the happiest she'd ever known. Issei tears up, promising that once she recovers, he'll introduce her to his friends Matsuda and Motohama, though they might try to diddle her. Unfortunately, those plans are cut short as Asia quietly passes away in his arms. Shattered, Issei begins to cry uncontrollably. As he sits in the abandoned church, he turns to prayer, begging God to bring Asia back. He pleads for mercy, believing that someone as gentle and kind as her doesn't deserve this fate. Yet his words vanish into the silence, and he comes to realize that he's too far gone, too corrupted for heaven to hear him. Suddenly, Yuma returns, mocking his desperate prayers. At the same time, Maitelt, Donasik, and Kaluana laugh at Issei's foolishness, ridiculing him for ever believing Yuma's act. Their taunts continue until Riez finally loses patience and unleashes her fury on the fallen trio outside. Back in the church, Yuma reveals a wound on her side given to her by Kaiba. Without hesitation, she uses Asia's twilight healing to mend herself, smugly declaring that she's now invincible. Issei confronts her once more, saying that everything she did was wrong. Yuma counters with cold logic, stating that this was always Asia's fate. In her view, humans who wield sacred gears are feared and rejected, and it's only natural they meet such ends. Unable to accept this, Issei breaks down, but instead of collapsing in despair, he taps into his fury. With his dragon hand glowing, he launches a fierce attack. It doesn't do much at first, but as his emotions surge, he pushes past his limits and finally blasts Yuma across the room. Weakened and on the verge of collapse himself, Issei is caught by Kaiba, who offers him support. Soon after, Riez and the others arrive, giving him a moment to breathe. Koneko brings Yuma back into the chapel, where Riez updates Issei, telling him that the 3 fallen angels outside have been taken care of. To crush Yuma's arrogance one last time, Riez reveals to her that Issei's sacred gear, the dragon hand she had mocked, is actually the boosted gear, one of the 13 weapons, powerful enough to rival both God and Satan, depending on the will of its wielder. Realizing the gravity of her situation, Yuma reverts to her innocent disguise, the same sweet girl Issei once went on a date with. But this time, Issei tells her begone thought and leads her fate to Riez, who finishes what he started. With Yuma gone, Riez retrieves the twilight healing and tells Issei that they might be able to return it to its rightful owner. Carefully, Issei places the sacred gear back onto Asia's finger, overwhelmed with guilt that he couldn't protect her when it mattered. Understanding the weight of his grief, Riez presents a bishop piece and explains that Asia, with her healing powers, could become a valuable addition to their household. Without hesitation, she attempts to revive Asia by making her a devil. Miraculously, Asia opens her eyes and Issei pulls her into a hug, unable to stop the tears. Riez watches the moment fondly and gently tells him that Asia's well-being is now his responsibility. The following day, Issei returns to the clubhouse where Riez checks in on his recovery. He assures her that he's fully healed and jokingly says he's ready for any service required. Riez smiles and praises him as her most dependable pawn. Before things get too sentimental, Riez teases Issei, warning him that their new recruit might feel jealous. Right on cue, Asia enters and looks disheartened at the closeness between the two. As she begins to pray out of habit, she suddenly clutches her head in pain. Riez calmly informs her that as a devil, she can no longer pray to God. She then asks if she regrets this transformation, but Asia replies with gratitude, saying she's happy because now she gets to stay by Issei's side. Curious, Issei asks about her plans for education, and Asia reveals that she will now be attending classes with him. Riez explains that with her father's influence on the academy board, she pulled a few strings to make it happen. Soon after, Kiba and Kaneko enter with Akino, who carries a celebratory cake. Together, the Grimmery household welcomes Asia into their family with open arms. The following morning, as Issei steps into the clubhouse, he notices bazooka protectors and instantly gets excited as he starts to imagine Asia. Before his thoughts get any filthier, he attempts to peek into the bathroom where Asia is showering, only to be whacked on the head by Kaneko, who bluntly tells him that he needs to be locked up with Diddy. Moments later, Asia steps out in nothing but a towel, asking him what he's doing with her plot armor. Caught red-handed, Issei quickly diverts the conversation and asks why she's here in the first place. Asia cheerfully replies that Riez allowed her to temporarily live at the clubhouse until they find a suitable place for her to stay. Later that day, Riez pulls Issei aside to let him know he needs to goon less and work out more. She declares that from now on, she'll personally train him for battle. Issei, being Issei, jokes that he's already battling urges every day thanks to her wibble wobbles. With that, he heads out to distribute magic circles for contracts. The next morning, Riez picks Issei up for training. Though he tries to flirt his way out of exercise by suggesting they do cardio on the bed, Riez shuts him down instantly. Eventually, he pushes through the workout with the motivation of becoming the ultimate harem king. Riez uses his back as an IKEA chair, which makes Issei go crazy. Sensing where his mind has wandered, she tells him to focus and quit being disgusting. Just then, Asia appears, prompting Riez to pause the training. She announces that they're heading to Issei's house, confusing him at first, but he soon finds out Riez has arranged for Asia to live with Issei and his family. When Issei's parents greet Asia, they ask why a sweet girl would willingly move in with a boy who wants to fertilize her eggs. Asia politely explains that Issei has been kind to her, which is why she trusts him. Despite their son's reputation, his parents are thrilled to hear that someone actually sees potential in him. Riez adds that Asia plans to become Issei's housewife, which makes his parents emotional, since they believed every woman was smart enough to avoid their loser son. At the academy next day, Asia introduces herself to the class. Matsuda and Motohama, as expected, immediately scan her like they're Taylor Swift. When she mentions she's living with Issei, the boys gang up on him in pure jealousy. While Issei gets verbally roasted, he finds some comfort in watching Asia get along with the girls in class. That is, until he overhears them warning Asia to lock her bedroom door at night or risk waking up to Issei transforming into the uncle who gives you life. Long trauma. After class, Issei rides his bike with Asia seated behind him. For a moment, they behave like they want to make as many babies as Ronaldo made, but the moment fades as they arrive at the clubhouse. When he greets Riez, he notices she's quieter than usual. She then informs Asia that it's time to make her official debut. Issei, concerned, feels it's too soon for Asia to begin forging contracts with strangers. However, Akino arrives and assures him that Asia is already quite powerful since she is ranked just below herself. While everyone applauds Asia's strength, Issei can't help but feel slightly envious of her fast-track progression. Determined to stay close to her, he requests permission to accompany Asia while she gets used to the outside world. But Riez declines and sends him off to fulfill his own client duties. Upon arriving at his destination, Issei is stunned to find a buff man dressed like a nurse waiting for him. Despite wanting to run away, Issei gathers his courage and asks the client what his desire is. The man reveals that he dreams of becoming a magical girl. Issei explains that unless he gets hit by Truck-kun and reincarnates, there's no real way to make that happen. The man accepts the advice, and Issei returns, once again contractless. The following day in gym class, Issei reflects on how Riez had scolded him for failing yet again to forge a contract. Depressed, he heads to the infirmary to take a nap. When he wakes up, he finds Riez sleeping beside him, completely uncovered. With trembling hands, Issei reaches for the 2 reasons men die for, but just when he is close, Riez wakes up. Catching him red-handed, Riez offers a deal. If he wants to touch her, he needs to successfully form a contract first. With renewed determination and Riez woobies as motivation, Issei agrees. That evening in the clubroom, Riez says she'll accompany him. Issei feels like a champion, believing her presence guarantees success. They teleport through the magic circle and find themselves in an apartment full of samurai decor. There, they meet Susan, an exchange student obsessed with Japanese culture. Susan's initial wish is to retrieve her lost university notes. Issei complies, although confused about why he keeps attracting such clients who clearly need to be in the psych ward. Once the job is done, he prepares for his reward, only for Susan to reveal another request. Turns out she's in love with someone but too shy to confess. Knowing she is a weeb, Issei tells her to get a cat and a rose toy instead. Riez scolds him, and he quickly advises Susan to write a love letter. She loves the idea and even delivers it using an arrow. The next day, her love interest, who also looks like he is from 90 Days Fiancé, shows up and accepts Susan's feelings. Watching the 2 lovebirds elope gives Issei hope that maybe he and Gunners of Aniender might finally be able to lose their virginity someday. With his job complete, Issei turns to Riez and demands his promised reward. Riez teases him, saying she'll count to 5 and after that, he can't touch her. Issei starts panicking, unsure which side to grab first. But before he can make a move, Kiba and the others walk in. The moment is ruined as Issei ends up grabbing nothing but air. Noticing his despair, Riez gently hugs him, lifting his spirits and watching them from the side. Akino quietly wonders if Riez is starting to fall for their hopeless servant. As Issei and Asia prepare to head out for their daily grind of distributing magic circles, when Riez announces that this will be the final week, where they will have to do such a lame job. However, before Issei can even start celebrating, Riez adds that they'll first need to find themselves a familiar to handle these errands in the future. To set the example, Riez reveals her own familiar, a bat that can shapeshift into a girl. Upon closer inspection, Issei realizes she is the same girl who had handed him a magic circle during his ill-fated date with Yuma. Next, Akino reveals her familiar. An imp Kaneko follows suit by presenting her feline companion Shiro. Just when Keiba steps forward to show off his own familiar, Issei cuts him off, telling him that he doesn't give a flying crap about him, prompting Riez to explain the importance of familiars. Curious, Asia asks how one obtains a familiar, but before Riez can respond, they're interrupted by Sona, the student council president who is accompanied by her crew. Aquino leans over and whispers to Issei that Sona, like Riez, is a high-ranking devil. Sona then formally introduces her newest servant, Saji, who holds the rank of pawn. In return, Riez proudly announces the addition of Issei and Asia to her family. Hoping to bond over their shared title, Issei approaches Saji, only to be met with disdain as Saji says just being in the same room as Issei has fried his brain cells. Before Issei can give him a wedgie, Sona scolds Saji, causing him to apologize to Issei, but then he shifts his attention to Asia and begins flirting shamelessly. Meanwhile, Sona and Riez discuss how they plan to help their underlings acquire familiars. However, since only one devil house can recruit familiars at a time, they agree to settle the matter with a badminton match. Riez teams up with Aquino, while Sona selects her vice president, Shinra. Soon enough, a crowd of gooners gathers around the court so they can see who has the best jiggle physics of all time. The match ends in a stalemate, forcing the girls to schedule a dodgeball game where both devil houses will participate. That night, Issei hands out handmade headbands to his teammates as a token of gratitude. Moments later, Sona and her squad arrive, and the game begins in full swing. Within seconds, Kaneko is eliminated, and the match's intensity rises, but Issei is more focused on the eye candy than the game. Just as he's about to lose all concentration, Sona throws a ball straight into his blue balls, making them actually blue. Asia rushes to his side, ready to heal him. She gently asks where it hurts, but Issei, red-faced and flustered, tries to escape before she unintentionally gives him a handy. Meanwhile, Riez gathers her team and vows revenge for Issei's cracked nuts. The Gremory household stands on business, as Riez herself secures victory by attacking Saji where the sun doesn't shine. The match ends and Sona accepts defeat with grace but points out that if this had been an official rating game, her side would have taken the win. Riez simply smiles and lets her live in that fantasy. Back at the clubhouse, the team celebrates their win. Once the cheers settle, Riez informs Issei and Asia that the time has come to finally get their familiars. When Kiba questions the urgency, Riez explains that the familiar master only appears under the full moon. After teleporting into a mysterious forest, the group is welcomed by the cornball familiar master, Zatuji. Aquino tells Issei that Zatuji was once a respected Pokemon master, but his license got revoked after he was caught trying to breed with Pikachu. Zatoji leads the group to a nearby lake, suggesting that Issei could bond with a water spirit called Undyne. Issei initially gets excited, hoping to finally bond with something that isn't his right hand, but his hopes and meat pole both get disappointed when Undine emerges, looking like a chick with a plot twist in the pants. Devastated, Issei declines, stating that he would rather drag his wee-wee across broken glass than have testosterone Tina as a familiar. The group moves on and stumbles upon a dragon. Just as Issei prepares to tame it, the sky darkens and slimes begin to fall from above. To everyone's dismay, the slimes strip away the girl's clothing, immediately earning Issei's affection. Declaring them as the best creatures ever, he tries to claim them as his familiars. However, Riez is disgusted and announces they need to be dead. Before Issei can tell them that the slimes could be some idiot who got reincarnated as slimes, the dragon unleashes a lightning attack that burns the slimes to ash. To everyone's shock, the dragon then chooses Asia to be its master. She names him Rasei. Upon returning, Aquino explains that dragons only choose masters with pure hearts, which explains why Rasei instantly electrocutes Issei the moment he tries to get friendly. Humiliated, Issei swears vengeance and vows to one day acquire a familiar so powerful that it'll make Rasei look like a house lizard. The rest of the team just laughs, knowing the only thing Issei has successfully tamed is the cobra in his pants. Issei's day begins with a wild surprise as he finds himself married to Riez. His classmates immediately question how many goats he sacrificed to land a woman like her, while his parents beam with pride, which your parents will never do. Baffled, Issei tries to make sense of how their relationship escalated so quickly. Choosing not to dwell on it, he realizes that all those pineapples he consumed are finally going to pay off when Riez goes down on him. All of a sudden, a sinister voice cuts through the fantasy, claiming to reside inside him. The scene abruptly shifts, and Issei now finds himself standing before a massive red dragon who introduces himself as Issei's eternal partner. Suddenly, Issei jolts awake, screaming in pain, realizing it was all just another chaotic dream. The next morning at school, a groggy Issei is approached by Matsuda and Motohama, who check in after learning he had a rough night. Issei explains his disturbing dream, prompting the boys to reveal they've had some unsettling ones too. Asia soon joins the group, apologizing for waking him earlier. Upon learning that their loser friend gets personal wake-up calls from a baddie with a fatty Matsuda, and Motohama spiral into another fit of rage and jealousy. After a round of coping, they theorize that Issei must be packing 11 inches to have girls constantly throwing themselves at him. In their desperation, they strike a deal. If Issei introduces them to anyone with a pulse, they'll reward him with VIP access to a mind-blowing experience. Issei agrees and soon finds himself crammed inside a locker hidden within the girls' changing room. He happily observes more chesticles than a plastic surgeon in Ola until his luck runs dry and Kaneko catches him red-handed and responds with a knuckle sandwich that turns Issei into a before and after makeup tutorial. Asia rushes to patch up his bruised face, offering to strip for him if that's what he really wants. But Issei nervously declines, stating he prefers his goon material to come without consent. Later, Akino informs Riez that Issei has been receiving nothing but praise from his clients. Although Akino finds this amusing, Riez grows concerned. She fears that if Issei experiences too much success, it may shake his fragile sense of self, which has grown accustomed to failure. Later that day, Issei sulks about how Kaneko must hate him now, hoping a bath will cleanse both body and mind. He heads to the bathroom only to discover Asia already in the tub. Startled, he screams and flees when Asia stops him, impressed by his banana. She hugs him and offers her taco for stuffing, but Issei shyly calls her a naughty girl, only for his mother to walk in before they can further the plot. A little later, Issei attempts to meditate, but his brain is too occupied with thoughts of Asia's melons. Before he can suppress his urges, another magic circle appears, and Riez emerges and asks Issei to breed with her like they are the last people on Earth. As she disrobes, Issei silently panics over whether he clipped his nails. Riez urges him to fill her with his mayo and then climbs on top. Before anything actually happens, another magic circle lights up, and this time, an ugly maid steps in, mocking Riez's taste in men. She warns that Surzex, her older brother, would be ashamed. However, Riez counters that everyone loves medium ugly men like Issei. The maid, Grafia, tosses Riez a shirt and introduces herself as a servant of the Grummery household. Issei, mesmerized by her beauty, gets his cheek pinched by Riez, who apologizes for getting his hopes up before departing with Grafia. The following day, Issei is deep in thought when he's ambushed by Matsuda and Motohama. They are furious after realizing the girls Issei introduced them to were actually traps. Later, he returns to the clubhouse and is met by an ugly devil. Grafia introduces the man as Razor, a high-ranking noble and Riez's fiancé. Seeing Razor place his hands on Riez causes Issei's mood to sour. Thankfully, Riez isn't having it either and tells Razor that she has no intention of marrying a cornball like him. Razor coldly reminds her that due to the lack of pure-blood devils, arranged marriages are necessary, and backing out would tarnish her family's name. Riez remains firm in her refusal, prompting Razor to lose his cool. Just as he attempts to intimidate her, Grafia intervenes, reminding Riez she is under Surzek's orders, and announces that if she refuses the engagement, she must face Razor in a raiding game. Razor accepts immediately, confident in his experience and his cuddle crew. Meanwhile, Issei watches Razor drowning in Kuchi and begins sobbing over his own luck despite being the protagonist. When Razor learns that Issei dreams of having a harem, he further mocks him by fondling one of his girls in front of everyone. Enraged, Issei insults Razor, claiming his ugly face could make onions cry. He then activates his dragon hand, only to be swiftly kicked in the gut by one of Razor's subordinates, sending him crashing to the ground. Seeing this, Riez agrees to the raiding game, determined to teach Razor that even losers can become legends. Razor and his harem of thoughts leave. Asia tends to the wounded pawn while Grafia informs Riez that the raiding game will commence in 10 days. When questioned about why they are given so many days, Grafia bluntly states it's because the Grummery house consists of crybabies and wankers. For the first time, Riez doesn't even bother to deny it. To prepare, the team hikes up a mountain for training. Issei, panting like an exhausted pug, trails behind while Riez silently vows to transform Issei into a decent fighter or else they'll have to steal Naruto's corny flute to emotionally blackmail their enemies. The training begins immediately, which makes Issei rather upset. Later, during a break, Issei asks Kaiba about his hatred for priests and fallen angels. Kiba simply states that Riez saved them all from a dark place, and this is why they need to repay her back by winning the raiding game. The first training session begins with swordplay. Kiba makes quick work of Issei, who can't even parry a breeze. Irritated, Issei claims that the only sword he knows how to wield is the one inside his pants. The next round features Akino teaching magic. Asia picks it up with ease, impressing everyone with her natural affinity. Meanwhile, Issei struggles to conjure even a spark. Ince's thoughts are corrupted by Akino's note bags. Hands-to-hand combat comes next, as Kaneko treats Issei like a 90s wife. Later, Riez assigns Asia and Issei to cook. While Asia boils water with magic, Issei peels potatoes using nothing but his intrusive thoughts. Fueled by cultured fantasies, he ends up with a mountain of peeled spuds. At dinner, Issei regains morale by imagining the girls without their plot armor. Riez asks how training is going, and he admits he was the weakest link. Riez agrees but reminds him of his boosted gear, a weapon capable of turning tides, if used right, and she advises him to not let her down. Meanwhile, the girls enjoy a relaxing dip in the hot springs. While Riez and Aquino flaunt their gravity-defying honkadonkers, Asia sulks about having humble pancakes. Seeing this, Kaneko reminds her that at least she is not the president of the itty-bitty-titty community. Meanwhile, Issei tries his level best to get goon material for his late-night sessions. Kiba warns him to not do anything crazy, but Issei shuts him up, stating this as part of his training. Recalling how Kaneko herself told him how his specialty is to be a creep. That night, Issei creeps up to Asia and asks her for a strange favor. After borrowing her clothes, Issei tries to practice his magic when suddenly Asia comes into his vision and suffers an attack. The following day, Riez rounds her evil pieces and gives in a lesson on history. Centuries ago, a brutal war between devils, angels, and fallen angels wiped out most of the old world. Only 3 noble devil houses survived, and their low birth rates left them clinging to life like an endangered species. Hence, the tradition of reviving humans and training them through raiding games began. After the lecture, Issei apologizes to Asia for the previous night's incident. Asia shrugs it off, reminding him to focus on the mission. The pawn then hints that everything must remain a secret until the ultimate move is ready. Later, Riez asks Asia about exorcists, and the former nun explains that they typically rely on holy water and scripture, both of which cause serious damage to devils. That night, Riez finds Issei wandering alone. Dressed like sin itself, she invites him for a late-night conversation where she admits that Razor is practically immortal, thanks to his regeneration powers. He's also undefeated and part of one of the highest-ranking families in the devil hierarchy. Riez then reveals the bitter truth. Her father staged this whole situation to give her the illusion of free will, only to push her into the marriage anyway. When Issei asks why Razor is off the table, Riez reveals that his face alone can make her as dry as the Sahara Desert. Feeling hopeless, Issei admits he doesn't know how to protect her, so Riez takes him into a hug to lift his mood and wee-wee. The next morning, Riez instructs him to boost his gear 12 times and then unleash an attack on Kaiba. Issei does as told, and the attack levels an entire mountain and leaves Kiba rattled. Upon recovering, Kiba reveals that Issei's attack was as powerful as a high-ranking devil's attack. Hearing that, Riez urges everyone, but especially Issei, to believe in himself. With just an hour left before the raiding game begins, Issei reflects on Riez's earlier speech, where she urged the team not to feel insecure about facing Razor, despite him being an immortal Chad and a seasoned champion of the game. Now in the present, anxiety crawls up Issei's spine as he anticipates a complete backside whooping. His train of thought derails when Asia appears in her old church attire, prompting Issei to ask what she is up to. Without hesitation, Asia takes a seat beside him, admitting she's terrified but believes everything will be fine as long as they stick together. Reinforcing her blind optimism, Issei agrees, claiming that as long as they remain united, they'll definitely be able to beat the Andrew Tate of Devils. Upon gathering at the clubhouse, Riez and her evil pieces are greeted by Sona and her loyal sidekick. Sona informs Riez that she personally volunteered to oversee the game, given it's her first official raiding match. Right on cue, Grafia enters, asking Riez if she's ready to proceed. Upon receiving the confirmation, she informs the group that once they activate the magic circle, they'll be transported to a battlefield created specifically for the match. When Issei questions what this battlefield exactly is, Aquino explains that it's an alternate dimension designed for the purpose of raiding games. Once Sona and her vice president depart, Grafia drops another bomb. Lucifer himself will be spectating the match. Hearing this, Riez's mood sours, realizing her all-seeing brother is going to watch her every move. Meanwhile, Issei tries to process the fact that Riez's brother is none other than Lucifer. Kiba clarifies that Surzex is one of the current 4 Satans, having surpassed the previous Lucifer and earning the title of Lucifer Satan. Asia then concludes that this is why Riez holds the title of Harris to the Grimoire family in place of her brother. With formalities done, Grafia instructs the Grimoire team to step into the circle. Upon doing so, they find themselves in a warped replica of Ku Academy. When Issei peers outside, the twisted sky confirms they're inside an alternate space. Graphia proceeds to announce that the Occult Research Club will serve as Riez's base, while Razor will be stationed in the principal's office. Hearing that, Issei lights up, assuming he'll receive a battlefield promotion if he manages to outwit Razor. Aquino chuckles and quickly crushes the dream, stating it won't be that simple. Kiba adds that Razor's pawns also stand a chance to earn a promotion if they infiltrate Riez's base. Just as Issei's shoulders droop in disappointment, Kaneko hands him a communication device. Riez outlines the battle plan, stating everyone will remain in contact throughout the match. At the same time, in the enemy base, Razor tells his own evil pieces to destroy Riez completely so she'll crawl back to him in submission. With the game officially underway, Riez assigns her first orders. Kiba and Kaneko are instructed to lay traps within the forest. Once the duo sets out, Riez tells Aquino to manipulate the environment using illusionary magic. After Aquino leaves, Issei asks for his assignment. Riez tells Asia to remain with her since she will serve as the recovery unit. As the two sit together, Riez then instructs Issei to rest his head on her thunder thighs. The moment he does, Issei finds peace in a way therapy could never offer. In the meantime, across the room, Asia seethes in jealousy. Riez, sensing the moment is right, informs Issei she will now remove part of the spell restricting his power. As soon as she does, Issei feels a sudden surge of power flowing through him. Riez explains that when she first resurrected him, his human body couldn't contain the energy within the boosted gear. That is why she had sealed most of it using layered spells, and the intense feeling he just experienced is merely a fragment of his true potential. Only then does it dawn on Issei that the entire training camp was organized to help him survive his own strength. Riez then reminds him not to hesitate, even if his opponent turns out to be a Victoria's Secret model with tatas so big it hides her face. Issei assures her that he'll bring victory, regardless of cup size. Soon after, Aquino announces that preparations are complete. With that, Issei and Kaneko are dispatched toward the gymnasium. Riez warns them that once they enter, combat will be unavoidable. Asia, ever the devout ex-nun, silently prays for the safety of her teammates despite technically being at war with God. Inside the gymnasium, Issei and Kaneko encounter Mira, Chulin, Il, and Nel. Kaneko, analyzing the threat, states that Chulin is a rook with strength rivaling that of a queen. Despite the odds, Issei reminds Kaneko that they expected nothing less, and this is what they trained for. With resolve, they engage as Kaneko takes on Chulin, leaving Issei to face the remaining trio. Meanwhile, Razor sends 3 of his own pawns, Shlia, Marion, and Bilent, on a mission to infiltrate the clubhouse. Back in the gymnasium, Kaneko dishes out a lesson in pain while Issei finds himself chased by Mira and the twins. Eventually, Issei manages to overwhelm them. For the grand final, he unleashes his trump card, Dress Break. When he uses the move, their clothes disintegrate, and the pawns retreat in humiliation, accusing Issei of being a walking violation. While Issei basks in glory, he mentally thanks Asia, crediting her for helping him refine the forbidden technique as she let him tear her clothes to shreds. Just then, Riez orders both Issei and Asia to vacate their positions. Aquino is ready to execute the next phase. Upon exiting, Aquino unleashes a devastating magical strike, obliterating the enemy pawns and Chulin in one fell swoop. Elsewhere, deep in the forest, Kiba finds himself surrounded by 3 enemies eager to taste his thick white yogurt. Back near the gymnasium, just as Issei and Kaneko prepare to advance, a sudden magical blast strikes, leaving Kaneko injured, severely wounded. Kaneko weakly apologizes for not being of greater service to Riez. In response, Issei, burning with vengeance, vows to defeat Yubaluna, who is also known as Razor's queen. Though Kaneko disappears from the field, Riez calmly informs Issei that she hasn't died. The players who can no longer fight are automatically teleported out of the raiding game and receive immediate medical care. However, with fury coursing through his veins, Issei attempts to go after Yubaluna himself. Before he can make a move, Aquino steps in and tells him to back off, declaring that she'll be the one to handle this busty babe. Accepting her command, Issei retreats as Yubaluna expresses her desire to finally face the infamous Thunder Priestess. Aquino, equally excited, welcomes the challenge against the well-known Bomb Queen. Elsewhere, Issei is joined by Kiba, who has successfully eliminated Razor's trio of pawns. With their current standings, Razor is left with 9 evil pieces, while Riez holds on to 5. Upon hearing about Kaneko's retreat, Kiba admits she had been looking forward to the battle, prompting Issei to propose avenging her defeat. Riez suddenly interjects with a new strategy, ordering the boys to create a diversion while she and Asia launch a surprise strike on Razor. This strange idea leaves the boys surprised, though Reyes explains that relying solely on Aquino is no longer feasible since she is preoccupied with Yubaluna. When Keba voices concern about the risks, Reyes unveils her actual plan. She will not injure Razor physically, but will break him mentally. Trusting Reyes' judgment, Keba and Issei set out to fulfill their roles. Almost instantly, they encounter Razor's knight Carlomagne. Keba engages Carlomagne directly while Issei spectates, completely captivated by their swordplay. Before long, Issei finds himself surrounded by Razor's remaining evil pieces, beginning with Isabella the Rook, while Razor's sister, Ravel, observes the scene from afar. In that moment, Issei realizes that Razor must be from Alabama, if he included his own sis in his harem. Meanwhile, Isabella launches a barrage of brutal attacks, forcing Issei to steel himself in defense of Reyes' honor. Meanwhile, Reyes and Asia infiltrate the principal's office only to be intercepted by Razor, who claims to have anticipated their arrival. Back in the woods, Carlomagne struggles to comprehend the variety of swords in Keba's possession and asks him if he has multiple sacred gears. Keba explains that while he only has one, it grants him the ability to forge numerous magical swords. Simultaneously, Issei manages to activate Dressed Break on Isabella. The moment her armor shatters and her bits are exposed, he captures the memory in his hard disk for his hard dawn. As a result, Isabella is retired from the game, stunning Ravel, who assumed Issei was nothing more than a low-tier loser. Before Issei can mentally high-five himself, Ravel urges him to lock in. Glancing above, Issei spots Reyes and Asia locked in confrontation with Razor. Surprised to see Reyes making a direct attack, Issei gets told by Ravel that Reyes never had a chance of winning against Razor since he's immortal. Following that, Ravel commands a group of furry pawns to attack Issei, with Cirrus joining the fray as well. However, Issei remains unfocused. His attention shifts to Reyes' struggle until her voice echoes in his mind, commanding him to rise and fight for her. Taking her words to heart, Issei pleads with the Red Dragon for strength, activating a more menacing version of the boosted gear. Calling out to Keba, Issei requests a combined attack. Responding without hesitation, Keba merges his strength with Issei's. The resulting blast generates a field of magical swords, wiping out all enemy pieces in their path. Their moment of triumph is short-lived, as news breaks that Aquino has fallen at the hands of Yubaluna. Not long after, Keba suffers the same fate. Yubaluna, now standing as the victor, returns to disrupt Reyes' momentum. Razor, now visibly confident, mocks Reyes for dragging out the inevitable and prolonging Issei's suffering. Meanwhile, Ravel scolds Yubaluna for taking so long. Yubaluna replies, revealing a vial, and tells Ravel that she had to seek additional help in order to defeat Aquino. When Issei asks them what's in the vial, Ravel reveals that it's called Phoenix Tears, a treasure of the Phoenix family, which instantly cures any wound. Issei grits his teeth in anger and rushes inside Razor's base, seeking for the Queen's power. When he receives it, he instantly arrives to help Reyes, who is getting back shots by Razor. Meanwhile, Yubaluna moves swiftly and tries to harm Asia when Issei quickly steps in and shields her. However, when Asia faints from the shock, Issei vows to finish Razor off. As he charges at Razor and Yubaluna, Issei ends up falling, spectating the match from another location. Sona states that using too much boosted gear has harmed Issei's body. Yet even then, Issei assures Reyes to continue fighting and not submit. Ticked off, Razor personally fights Issei and vows to burn him, causing Reyes to resign from the game, all so she can protect Issei. In his state of unconsciousness, Issei hears a voice pushing him to use all his power. He realizes the voice sounds familiar while the being tells him that if he keeps behaving like a sissy, he will never get stronger and be able to defeat the white guy. Confused, Issei asks who this white guy is, but the being tells him he'll know when the time comes. Suddenly, Issei finds himself face to face with Drake, the Emperor Dragon who lives inside his left arm. Waking up with a jolt, Issei begins to panic when Grafia appears in his room. Seeing her, he asks what happened to the game, but most importantly, if Reyes is alright. The maid reveals that it was Razor who won the game as Reyes admitted defeat. Stunned, Issei states that the Reyes he knows would never ever admit defeat. So then, Grafia reveals that she did so because Razor was hellbent on eliminating him. Reyes accepted defeat so her ugly manservant can continue to goon to Lolis. In that moment, Issei remembers the moment when Reyes was crying and telling him to rest as he did more than he should have. now tearing up himself. Issei blames himself for not being strong enough to protect his master, but what's even worse, he could not even aura farm in front of Riez. Gathering himself, he asks what happened to the rest of the crew, and Graphia informs him that Asia was ordered to nurse him to health while the rest of the gang is in the Devil Realm for Riez's engagement party. Shocked, Issei remembers during a training camp Riez told him that she wanted to marry someone who she at least loves. Recalling all the moments he shared with Riez, Issei begins to ugly cry. He blames himself for being a weak, disgusting loser who couldn't protect Riez, but Graphia assures him that Riez was simply doing what she was meant to do from the start. However, Issei refuses to let Riez get tainted by a scum like Razor. Graphia finds it interesting how Issei is willing to go through such lengths for his master, so she hands him a magic circle which will allow him to teleport to the engagement party. She reveals that it was Surzex who ordered her to give him the magic circle, as he too found her an interesting bloke. Once Graphia departs, Asia enters the room and jumps on Issei's bone. However, instead of jumping on it like a bunny, she starts to cry. Through tears, Asia reveals how he was in a coma for 2 days even when she tried her best to heal him. Issei seeks her forgiveness and then reveals his plan of rescuing Riez. Hearing the absolute determination behind his voice, Asia states she will accompany him as well, but Issei tells her no. Asia refuses to listen and insists that she is strong and can help him fight Razor. However, knowing the stakes, Issei orders her to stay safe. Asia cries, telling him how she is scared that if he keeps fighting, he'll finally lose his ability to get Morning Woods. A smile plays on Issei's lips as he tells Asia to remember how he saved her despite all odds. Now feeling a little confident, Asia tells him that if he is going, he better return with Riez no matter what. With that settled, Issei asks Asia for a favor, which she accepts. As she steps out of the room, Issei calls upon Drake and states that he wants to make a bargain with him. Drake accepts but warns Issei that he can't handle his power for more than 10 seconds, so he must wrap up the fight quickly. Meanwhile, in the Devil Realm, Riez frowns upon seeing her engagement dress. She notes that it looks like a wedding dress when Razor appears and tells her to suck it up, loser. With that, he arrogantly tells Riez that she doesn't need to worry, as her wedding dress will be out of the world since it will show that she is now owned by Razor. Once he leaves, Riez is disgusted by the thought of marrying a sleazeball like him. Her thoughts are filled with Issei, making her realize that she'll have to make herself nut while thinking about Issei instead of her own husband. Meanwhile, at the engagement party, Ravel proudly tells anyone who will listen that her brother got a bride through the rating game. The rest of the gang find Ravel's antics shallow when Sona arrives. She assures them their house did in fact put a good match. Kiba and Aquino thank her for kind words, but counter that it's not over yet. Minutes later, Razor arrives to welcome everyone, revealing that by this engagement party, the Grimory household and Phoenix household will be one. Just as Riez arrives at the scene, Issei bursts through the door and announces to everyone that Riez's V card will only be swapped by him. Enraged, Phoenix orders his guards to seize him, but Kiba and the gang quickly lend a hand to their pawn, allowing Issei to focus on the bigger fish. Razor watches the scene, shocked by the sudden intrusion when Surzex arrives and reveals that he asked Issei to come so they can have a final showdown for his sisters, Kuchi. Slightly annoyed, Razor tells Surzex that he won the rating game fair and square. Surzex agrees but states that if he wants to bust a fat one in Riez, he needs more than just his Dragon Balls. To further explain, he also adds that he wants to see the power of the dragon which Issei possesses. Turning his attention to Issei, Surzex asks what he wants if he manages to win. Without a doubt, Issei claims that he wants Riez, which Surzex acknowledges and accepts. Before the battle between the dragon and the phoenix begins, Issei assures Riez that he will settle this fight faster than it took for your father to make you.
Emotional, damn it!
With that, he runs towards Phoenix, announcing to everyone that he will battle God himself if it means keeping Riez happy. He uses Overboost, transforming his boosted gear into a full-fledged armor. Riez looks at Issei in shock, knowing the move is a forbidden one. The countdown begins, as Issei charges a Razor who in return calls upon the Hellfire possessed by the Phoenix. With only 6 seconds remaining, Issei uses Asia's cross to multiply the damage on Razor. At that moment, his eyes widen in horror as Razor realizes that Issei has given his entire arm to the dragon in exchange for him to use forbidden powers that allow him to wield a cross despite being a devil himself. With only 1 second remaining, Issei charges at Razor again, but midway, his time runs out. Drake communicates with him, revealing to Issei that because his body is weak, he could no longer bear the dragon's power. Even then, Issei prepares himself to sacrifice himself if it means to keep Riez safe. But before he can do so, Razor grabs Issei, ready to end the fight when Issei unveils a bottle of holy water and throws it on Razor's face. As his face starts to melt, and he starts to wither in pain, Issei recalls all the training given to him and charges to punch Razor, who begs him to look at the bigger picture. His marriage to Riez will ensure the well-being of the devils, but Issei states that nobody ordered a Yappuccino and Sucker punches Razor. Before he can cause real damage, Ravel arrives in time and shields her brother. Seeing Issei go through so much for Riez, Revel's own kitty starts to beat with desire for him. As the match ends, Riez and Issei soar off on a griffin's back. Mid-flight, Riez grabs Issei by the face, plants a toe-curling, spine-tingling, baby-making kiss on him, causing Issei to vow that next time, he is going to make Riez ride his magic carpet without clothes on. Do you want a harem like Issei? Comment Reyes Melons if you want part 2. As always, if you like this recap, watch more here.